Well, since the last video I did, I have been studying the connection between the date October 28th, November 1st, and this all happening like in 2023. And it's really interesting because Terry had sent me a gentleman that is doing decoding of Elvis tying in with Trump. And when I started digging on this, I have come up with so much information. It's actually uncanny. And it all connects to these dates that I just explained to you. And it also all connects to vaccine history in the United States. So I want to go through all this, and I had the most fun doing this. I've been addicted to listening to Elvis music now. It's really funny. Like it's like I've like rediscovered Elvis, and so I hope you guys enjoy this. It's taken me days to put this together, and so this is all connecting these dates that I've explained about. The end of Osiris Festival at the end of October, and this all aligning with the sky in 2023. I'm going to tie in the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, and how this all ties in with Donald Trump. So this week in Rio Grande, there was a Statue of Liberty that fell and just happened to be speared right through her heart. And I find this kind of ironic because I think it is symbolism. So we're at May 25th and this statue falls. This is one day before the blood red moon that was this month. And May 25th is when the sun is very close to the Pleiades. I know this is a long video, but I really want you to understand that I've been researching all this stuff for the last 4 to 5 years, and everything that I've been researching has come together, and I've put it in this video. Okay, so it's like a whole recap of all my whole awakening experience and how it relates to the timeline that we're in right now, and showing you that really you're in the Truman Show. Okay, so you need to detach from it. So I'm hoping you stick with it, and I hope you enjoy it because I had a blast putting it together. So October 28th has a connection to the Statue of Liberty, dedicated to the U.S. President Grover Cleveland, celebrated by this first confetti ticker tape parade in New York City, and this was in 1882. This is really interesting. I didn't realize this before, that Bill Gates' birthday is October 28th as well. And I think he represents the gates of hell. Okay, so I see him as, and there's a connection to the gates of hell and Elvis Presley. I want to explain why October 28th to November 3rd are the only days that this can really happen and tie into tropical and sidereal astrology plus the Osiris festival. Okay, so I put in green here, October 17th to November 3rd is the Osiris festival. We know we have a lunar eclipse on October 28th, and this is all in 2023. Now, if you take the tropical astrology for Scorpio, it's October 24th to November 22nd. And this Scorpio is when it's kind of like the kiss of death. It's really when a Scorpio bites you, it creates a little kiss mark on you, and it's known as the kiss of death. Okay, so this is when it would most likely something would happen to the king, the Lion King, which I'm assuming is Trump. Okay, and he knows this is going to happen, and I could tell you why, because he's done certain things on October 28th that correlate to this event. and I'm going to get into that. But the other part is in sidereal between October 31st, because this calendar, they took the same date, like it's October 30th, and then the beginning of Libra would be October 31st is Halloween, and that goes to November 23rd. But if you take, so then basically what I'm saying is we have a sidereal Libra date, which is when the sun falls. Every year the sun falls, goes over the tropic and of the equinox, and it falls. The sun falls in Libra, okay? And the kiss of death is in Scorpio. So we have a sidereal sun falling and a kiss of death in tropical. And this would correlate with the Osiris festival between October 28th and November 3rd. A huge historical event happened with Elvis Presley when he performed on October 28, 1956 at the Ed Sullivan Show. He was 21 years old. So 21 is like the universe number in tarot. Now, he performed 3 performances, I believe, during a short period of time. But October 28th is when he took the needle for the polio vaccine on TV. And this created the majority of young people to rush and take this vaccine. So this is all tying into our current timeline with the coronavirus vaccine. CNN on December 4th, 2020, did an article about Elvis Presley can help us with the COVID vaccine because, you know, he was the one that promoted it for polio. So I had to check the sky where the moon was when they did this CNN article with Elvis Presley and COVID. And of course, the moon was in Cancer, in its sign, right on the beehive cluster, which is the manger of Jesus. Okay, so Elvis Presley represents Jesus. Okay, he's the son, he's the king, he's the Lion King of American culture. CNN did a book review in October 28, 1998 about a book of Elvis. So they've tied the October 28 date into a book of his. You know, is that a coincidence? I don't think so. Not with everything that I'm going to show you. You're going to realize this is all connected. Now, we know Osiris is, you know, there's a connection to the snake and wisdom, and, you know, Trump has done the snake poem, but I didn't realize, well, I guess I did realize, but I didn't realize it connected to, you know, the vaccine and everything. October 28th in 2018, Trump had done this really weird act where he took the snake from one of the little girl who was dressed up as an Egyptian goddess. He took the snake and he waved it at the media. And I knew it was really relevant, but now that it's tying into the polio vaccine and Elvis, it's like mind-blowing. I was laughing so hard putting this stuff together for you guys. It's just, it's bringing me so much joy to see it all come together to the dates that, you know, that I have kind of foreseen. And it's absolutely brilliant what they're pulling off. The Great Reset is really about dividing the souls. So the snake has a duality, right? That's why it's on the caduceus of the medical symbol. It either bites you, or like is representing the needle. And this was in the show with Outlander. She was the medicine woman, and she needed to inject something into someone, and they took the fang of a snake and used that as the needle. Okay, so the fang of a snake is the needle. Now, either you take the wisdom of the snake, because the snake represents wisdom as well. So the snake either bites you or heals you. Okay, so there's a duality to the snake and Osiris. So one of the times that Trump read this snake poem, and, you know, they started trying to relate it to immigration or whatever. It's just this snake poem basically saying that the snake is evil. Okay, and that, you know, you can't trust the snake. Now, November 1st, 2020 was when he read it. So that's what I'm saying. I've explained before, that's All Saints Day. So if something would be happen to him, it would most likely be on October 28th, and then on the 3rd would be some big, I mean, on the 1st would be some big event happening where ascension is happening. Okay, I'm assuming some sort of ascension, like after a 3-day period. And the reason I'm saying that is because of this eclipse moon on the 28th of 2023, but also that it's celebration of the Day of the Dead with Halloween, which is really an old tradition, and then All Saints Day has to do with the good people ascending, right? So it's all to do with that. So that's why I do think they're going to pick this time, and it's so tied into the vaccine that now I'm starting to go like, okay, now I understand. This is really about who takes the needle and who gets ascended. Hermes, the messenger of the gods, rules your throat chakra, rules finance, and rules your intellect. So just want you to understand that. That's who Hermes is. That who is what Trump represents. He's the messenger. He's just telling you the story. He's not good or bad. He's just the messenger, okay, of this event that separates the souls. So on October 29th, 1929 was when they had the big Black Tuesday crash on the stock market. So that I'm assuming is because the 9 and the 2, it's like the 11 and the 9, it's 9/11. Like, so that's why they like the number 29 as well, right? It's like represents 9/11. So we have Trump with October 28th with the snake. We have him on November 1st with the snake, and now we have him on a 223 number, which would be February 23rd. This is in 2018. He mentioned the snake again. He did a snake poem again. He read it. Okay, so that's giving us the year, the October 28th date, and the November 1st. He's giving us the 2 dates. So that's, I think brilliant. He's told us when. He's confirmed it. And then on October 28, 2014, he reads here in a tweet, all governors are already backing off the Ebola quarantines. Bad decision. That will lead to more mayhem. So it's they're saying it's basically disease, quarantines, releasing them, and it's going to cause mayhem. So he's saying mayhem on the 28th, which is, this is, I think it's all done like this for us to be able to figure it out and see it. I don't see it as evil. I see it as it's just like an awesome game. It's like a treasure hunt, trying to find the little nuggets and pieces and the breadcrumbs to put the puzzle together. And I think it's just amazing that we can all start to see what they're talking about. It's like hidden code language, and we're start to understand the language. So Elvis took the polio vaccine on October 28, 1957, but no, on 56, sorry. And then on January 6, which is the famous Odin Wild Hunt Day and Trump's Wild Protest Day, with Odin showing up there. This was done on the Ed Sullivan Show. So this is one of his, I think, last performance of those. I think he did 3. But the fact that it's, January 6th and October 28th is really cool, because it's confirmation that this is all tying into the Epiphany and Odin's Wild Hunt, which is who he goes around to separate the souls. Such an amazing time to be alive back then, I would imagine, watching all this. So it was really fun watching this Ed Sullivan clip, because they come in, it's like, oh, the big M on the TV, is part of the commercial, Mercury. And then we have the Lincoln Motors. So there they are, putting Mercury, who has the orbit of 88, who is really Thoth, right? He's Hermes. And then they click in Lincoln, which I've gone all through, is Lincoln is the nectar of the gods. It's Lin, it's a pond. This is why the word Lincoln keeps showing up everywhere. It really means the nectar, the ambrosia that they're going to harvest. Okay, so this is just fascinating that it's like even way back then, they were dropping the symbolism into consciousness. So January 6th, with this BBC article about this vaccine smart patch for COVID, was, released on January 6th into BBC. So, this vaccine, this chip, is all tying into the polio vaccine and corona, and everything that's going on right now. There's also another part to it where it ties to cancer. Okay, so I've got to get into that as well, but it's all connected. And not supposing it's a coincidence that this vaccine tattoo patch is being manufactured in Swansea. This is in Wales, and this is a very historical location that, a lot of past events fighting the globalist was happening. Okay, the Welsh against the English. Now, Swansea, if you want to go through the constellations now, represents Cygnus. Now, we know Cygnus is a cross in the sky, but it can also be a sword. So the cross and the sword are the two paths. Okay, now the sword being upright, that the force is with you, you turn it into like a wand. Now, of course, this is being perceived as satanic. Okay, but what I'm saying is this realm, everything is backwards. So when you think something is satanic, like with this cross upward, you see it as evil. But they're twisting it. That is the freedom path, and the cross into the ground, which is like your sword stuck in the stone, is the path for the harvest, not the good path. There's a reason why Lisa Marie Presley did this video with Marilyn Manson, and Courtney Love was in it also. And it's called Tattooed in Reverse. They're referring to the COVID vaccine patch tattoo. Now, the reason that Lisa Marie was picked as the nurse to give the needle, this all ties into Elvis and the needle that he represents. Okay, and I'm going to get into that in this video. Here are some of the shots in the video. Like, you're strapped on a table, and this is an innocent girl, and she doesn't know any better, and then she gets strapped down, and they give her the needle, and she loses her voice. Something goes over her mouth, and she kind of becomes unconscious. And so it's kind of a creepy video, but you have to look past the symbolism of thinking it's satanic and understand the language, what is being presented to you. Okay, you have to let go of good and bad. Okay, just look at what's being presented, because this is how you escape this realm, how you see the Truman Show. They even have the sword up her back, which is the chakras. Okay, because this is how, if you really want to ascend, you have to activate your chakras up through your back and to become enlightened. Okay, so that you're not in this duality anymore of good and evil. Okay, now, this is, it's really interesting how it's done and then made to make people judge it, right? And this is part of your own alchemy of letting go of thinking one way is good and one way is bad, and just seeing it all from like a blank page and just trying to decipher what is being spoken to you. You can say it's all a coincidence, but once you understand the language, you realize it's not a coincidence, because how did I know that something was going to happen at this wild protest? It was a ritual, because they put it in the ellipse, which is really about an orbit, about flattening the curve, and they named it Wild Protest on Odin's Wild Hunt Day, January 6th. So no coincidence that Odin showed up with horns and Odin tattoos all over his chest. Like, you can predict these things now just by understanding the mythology and the dates of the mythology. So this is how this whole thing all started. Was Terry sent me this YouTube channel called Jurassic Liars 26, and he has linked this whole thing with Elvis Presley tying to Donald Trump. Elvis and Trump's being like satanic because he's using Elvis, and everybody loves Elvis, and it's kind of like satanic that Trump's using him, and that they're going to do something in Seattle because this all ties to the Space Needle. I do believe it all ties to the Space Needle. It all goes to with that eclipse that went through the United States in 2017. It's all part of that, and he thinks that they're going to like do something terrible in Seattle, and that they're going to eventually put a tattoo in you, for the COVID that's going to have Elvis's face in it. So I'm like, okay, for me, I'm just looking at the numbers and the dates and how they're all syncing. But whether or not something terrible is going to happen in Seattle, I doubt it. Like, I really doubt it. If anything, it would be a tsunami that comes with, a pole shift or something. That I can see. But what's interesting is in Gematria, the name Elvis ties into water. And this brings us back to 2023 because this is the water black rabbit year. That's the 60th Jubilee of the taking down of the King of Camelot, JFK, right? Which also happened in the water black rabbit year. So this is why I think this whole water thing is so relevant with Elvis. Also interesting, we have the gematria of the number 32 in both water and Elvis. Like it's identical, right? And then 22 being the Fool card, which is the card of the fool singing and dancing and everybody thinking he's a fool because he sees the illusion and he's fine with it, right? Now, why is water and Elvis identical in gematria? And if you take Elvis's name, it actually means lives, right? So that's why they always say Elvis lives, because the letters are lives in his name. So, this is where memory lives in water. Okay, so it's all part of, if you want to connect to the roots of the tree or not, to get your memory back. So needless to say, I understand why he has this inclination to think that Elvis is tied to the Space Needle, because he had a movie called It Happened at the World Fair, and the Space Needle's like tumbling down and on the cover. So, there is a connection with Elvis and the needle because he took the polio vaccine. So this is why this is on his movie cover. Another thing he mentioned about his Elvis connection is that Washington State, where the Space Needle is the 42nd state. Now, I know what the 42nd state, 42 means, because I've done the research. It's the 42 judges, Egyptian judges. And I found this in the Bible, Theologians 4:16. I was always wondering who was going to leave first, right? So then I found this and I was like, oh, okay, we got confirmation now. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of an archangel, and the trumpet call of God. And the dead in Christ will rise first. Okay, so whoever has taken this needle or the chip, the tattoo patch, that's going to be coming in the near future, no doubt, because they made it for something. And whoever takes that, they will rise first. So my last video, I was focusing on Pomona Fountain and all the Chinese zodiacs there. This is why it's tying into the Chinese water black rabbit year. And this is really most likely the fountain that ties to the Plaza Hotel, which is what Trump owned. And this would make it like Odin's well. Okay, it's called the Murmur Well. It's not the Erd Well, it's the Murmur Well, because it's tying into Odin. That's the way I'm reading this. And, I've gone through who Pomona is, and her festival runs from mid-October to November 1st. So because that's running to November 1st, this is narrowing our timeline even more, because the Osiris Festival also runs to November 1st. So November 3rd is not part of it. It's really, between October 28th and November 1st. Here's an overview of the plaza. I circled it, and then we have the fountain on one side. This is an old picture from 1920s, and then you had the equestrian statue on the other side. This is called the Sherman statue, and this is Nike, the goddess of victory, holding, it looks like her wheat there. It looks like a piece of wheat. So, she's got her ambrosia, she's collected her harvest, her bread, and, she's winning. Okay, so now this is also tying into the Statue of Liberty, freedom. So maybe she's representing freedom more than just, gathering her harvest. Now here we got back to Tecumseh. This is the Tecumseh curse. This statue is named after William Tecumseh Sherman. His father had an admiration for Tecumseh and named his son this. But, this is all tying into the presidential curse of whoever is elected on a 0-year and 20-year intervals would be killed or die during his presidency. So Biden is the one on that list right now. So maybe it's Biden that's going to get taken out, not Trump. But I doubt it, because he doesn't really come across as the Lion King. And it's the Lion King that has to fall. Here's a really cool picture of the Plaza Hotel. The Vanderbilts actually built this hotel. And here's a little quote that Trump spoke about it when he owned it, I guess. It features exquisite fountains and statues commemorating both American history and Roman architecture and deities. Yeah, because she's a Roman goddess, the Pomona. There's no Greek counterpart. So Trump purchased the plaza in 1888. So we got the 88, which is Mercury, right? He's Mercury. He's saying it isn't just a building, it's an ultimate work of art. I was in love with it. It is absolutely stunning. I did go to New York once. I wish I'd gone there. It's just unbelievable. What a building. So they actually have like deities around all over the place. And you can see here they have the Masonic tiles and all like tree pictures. So it's like the tree of life, right? Which is really cool. So it's changed hands quite a few times. And here's all the owners. It's also located right beside the apple. It has a bite taken out of it, right on the corner there. 5th Avenue, number 5, for Venus, V. So Home Alone 2 had this little clip where Trump was in it in the Plaza Hotel. And then on December 25th, 2019, they decided to take this clip out of it. And I think this is only in Canada. Yeah, they took the whole clip out of Donald Trump. So Donald Trump does not exist in Home Alone 2 anymore. And they're just saying it's because the movie was too long or whatever. But, not for political reasons, of all the hate and everything for Donald Trump. So they just, what I find it really interesting, it's like they're saying that he's like disappearing, right? He's out of the picture. He's no longer part of the motion picture show anymore. And it has to do with the plaza. And it's all because he's Odin, and Odin sacrifices himself to the tree of life. So this is an award called the Jewish National Fund Tree of Life Award. And they actually gave this award to Donald Trump. And he has it up on his wall. Now, I do think that's like a ship below it, right? It looks like a schooner ship. And there's the Tree of Life right there in his office. So I'm like, this is all about the Tree of Life, guys. And it gets even more crazy because it ties back to Elvis. So he received the Tree of Life Award on March 1st, 1983. So March being the 3rd month and the 1, so we got a 3-1. 1983, we have 111. So Levette had said to me, if they're going to do a sacrifice, to Jesus, it would have to be tied to a 311 number. So here it is, and I really do think they're going to sacrifice Donald Trump and, as part of the Tree of Life sacrifice. He also received American Friends of Biet El Institute. So the El, like Elvis, has to do with the Elohim. It's basically God or the elementals. 2006, Trump announced plans to build Trump Tower in Israel. Then, 2015, Trump received the Liberty Award from the Algemeiner for his contribution to U.S.-Israel relation. It says here, we love Israel. So, yeah, Trump says, I have a Jewish daughter. That wasn't the plan, but I'm very glad it happened. He also added, we love Israel. So it's this whole connection to Israel and Trump. So Trump gets a Freedom Award. Then he ends up giving Freedom Award to Babe Ruth, Elvis Presley, and Judge Scalia. And so there you have it on the Stephen Colbert show. And he's going, there's nothing in common with any of these people. This is ridiculous. Why is Trump, this is like, it just sounds like a bunch of nonsense. And this was in November 15th, 2008, right? So he does this whole thing, there's nothing in common with these people. And then I'm like, oh yeah, there's something majorly in common with Babe Ruth and Elvis Presley. And you want to know what it is? They both died on the same day. Oh yeah, August 16th. And this is a ritual, okay? Because it all ties into what happened to Babe Ruth. So then the media has to attack Trump for, he says it's a MAGA maneuver, like a white rock and roll guy, who kind of stole music from black people. And then, it's just like a, white supremacist award to Elvis Presley. They're always trying to make him out to be racist, while he really wasn't. And then they're saying here, yeah, like, I love Elvis, but like the next guy, but giving a presidential award to freedom, it's inappropriate, so it's like, anyhow, of course they have to make some drama to put people on the pillars about it all. So then they, kind of do this comparison of one's music. Remember when a guy named Donald Trump did something unconventional things, and how he establishment raised against him. What happened? The masses fall in love with him, and he has single-handedly changed the face of politics. And then the same thing with like Elvis Presley. So it's like they're both like referencing they're both kings, right? Kings of America. So this is Elvis Presley's Wikipedia page, just so you see that he died on August 16th, and he got the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Donald Trump. Now, so then Trump does this ceremony, and when, they're talking about it, he kind of puts his hand up on his tie about, Elvis Presley. Then they play a song, a gospel song of Elvis's, How Great Thou Art, which is really about, the Lord. And it's a famous song. And Trump then proceeds to say, when he starts talking about Elvis's work and stuff, he says, Elvis has left the house. And then, of course, they ridicule him for misquoting Elvis has left the building. But the reason he says the house, I'm pretty sure he's referencing it to the White House. What's really uncanny is that Saturn and the Sun on August 16th are both in Leo, right beside Regulus, well, almost in the mouth of the lion. And we have Mercury and the Moon at his feet. You have to remember, Regulus is what the Sphinx aligns to. This is the Eye of Ra. It's the fixed star. It's would be Archangel Raphael, Ra. And Osiris is in conjunction with Mercury and the Moon, almost at the ascension star of Zavi Java. So he's ascending, he's the Tree of Life, he's Mercury, he's the healer, he's the moon. This is all when Elvis left this realm, supposedly. And Uranus, which is heaven, is in conjunction with Shambhala at the bottom of the skirt of Virgo. And Shambhala would be like, paradise. It's Garden of Eden. So here's Babe Ruth, and Babe Ruth also died on August 16th, 1948, and he also got Donald Trump's award, Freedom Award. Okay, so this is uncanny, I'm telling you, because he's tying into Cancer and chemotherapy. But what's even more weird, Saturn is in conjunction with the Sun by Regulus in the same location. And Mercury is, right with Regulus. And yeah, so what's the chances of that, guys? What's, you think that's a coincidence? I don't at all. And the moon is with Nunki, which is like on the spear going in to shoot at the Golden Gate. Okay, and Nunki is like the high priestess. She's like Isis. She's like Osiris's wife, right? So anyhow, it just boggled my mind. They both on the same day, and the Sun and Saturn are both doing the same thing in Leo, the Lion King sign. Like, come on, this is playing the numbers and the sky and everything. Saturn returns to the same location in the sky only happen every 29 years. So this is pretty unbelievable. So Bill Gates, the gates of hell, is born on October 28th. And this gates of hell sculpture was made on August 16th, 1880. So we have the 88, we have the August 16th, which has to do with the gates of hell. And this is all tying into these numbers of October 28th and August 16th. There's actually 74 days between them. And we know the number 47 ties into Euclid math that Freemasons use. Okay, so I really do think there's a huge connection here with the gates of hell and Bill Gates because of the Ed Sullivan, everybody get vaccinated for polio because Elvis is on October 28th. So this all ties into Adam and Eve. It's also with a thinker. The thinker sculpture comes from. It was all to do with this gentleman. And he's saying here, Dante's Adam and Eve, for example, are in paradise, though thought to have been rescued from eternal damnation by Christ or Holy Saturday in the howling of hell. The three shades are a transformation of three sinners who Dante encounters in the seventh circle of murders. Suicides and homosexuals are all included among the violence against others, self and nature. So this whole sculpture is tying into our timeline. It's, all to do with Bill Gates and October 28th. There's a connection between August 16th and October 28th. It's all tying into Cancer, the polio vaccine, Corona, and the gates opening. Something major is going to happen. Between August 16th and October 28th, there's actually 74 days, which is 1776 hours. The founding of the United States is in 1776. So this past August 16th, Trump does a tweet storm because he's mourning the death of his brother. Okay, so his brother dies. And did you know that Elvis had a twin brother? So he had a twin brother that died at birth. His name was Jesse Garon. So his brother dies, but he continues to tweet about politics on the same day, about Dr. Fauci, and then about fair and balanced. Fair and balanced is free and fair. Election is an old song. It's just history repeating itself over and over again. So also on this day, August 16th, they make a big deal that Trump tries to hold Melania's hand and she pulls her hand away from him. So it's like, I don't want to hold your hand. It's like, it's just funny. I think it's all done as like clues for us to see the date, like kind of like, so this date sticks out. So then there's this whole thing where Trump says people used to tell him he looked just like Elvis Presley. He'll say, I'm very conceited. So as people have put like pics between the two and to see if they resembled when they were younger. And then there's actually even cartoons of Trump dressed up like Elvis. So there's lots of comparing Trump to Elvis going on. So then Trump at one of his rallies, and this is on November 26, 2018, he says, growing up, they said I looked like Elvis. That's where he said the quote was there. Yeah, and this was all in Elvis's birthplace in Tupelo. So Tupelo is actually named after a tree that bears fruit. And there's a honey that comes from the tree called a monofloral honey made of the nectar. So it's high ratio of glucose and fructose. So it's like, it's again representing the tree of life with its hanging fruit. And it actually ties into ancient mythology, this type of tree. It was called the Nissa Ogichi. And the Nissa was known as the birthplace of Dionysus. Okay, so Dionysus is, you know, the god that makes you drink the grapes, wine, or turns water to wine, and so that you can become immortal. Okay, and this all ties into the rain nymphs of Hades, and these are a cluster that's right in the Silver Gate in Taurus, where Trump is born. Zeus of Nysa. So here it's saying that even Homer mentions the mountain of Nisaean, the place where Dionysus, under the protection of the nymphs, grew up. So Dionysus grew up with the Nysa town, which all ties into this tree. Okay, same as Elvis. So you could say Elvis is Dionysus, okay, similar to saying Trump is Dionysus. Okay, so they're representing the freedom path. Okay, even though they're still pushing the vaccine and telling people to take the vaccine, Trump told people to take the vaccine, Elvis told people to take the vaccine, they're still wanting you to um, walk the side of immortality. Okay, so it's not like they're saying, I'm evil. They're just saying I can be good and I can be bad, and you have to transmute this energy and get to the middle path, because Elvis represents every single person on the planet, right? He came into fame from nothing. Everybody loved him. He sings the gospels, but it's like then he kind of like fell off track and turned evil, okay, or whatever. It's the same thing. You see this pattern. It's like they rise to fame and then they fall, but people still have admiration for who they were, right, and not who they became. So it's like you have to transmute that pain that person has, and see that in yourself, and therefore by doing that, you realize that there's no reason to judge anyone, right? It's just we all are who we are, and then when you get that love opens up your heart, because you don't have any judgment anymore, and therefore you can transcend. Nisa, or pronounced here Nasi, it all, same etymology. This is saying now it all ties to Neptune and going to the underwater palace where he turns her into a god, this nymph. Neptune was in love with this nymph, Nisi. So it all ties in. It's interesting how the mythology, but it's kind of weird. You're like, okay, so Elvis grew up in town, same as Dionysus, and this is all tying to the Tree of Life, and then he dies on the same day as Babe Ruth, and he took the vaccine on October 28th, and that's the same as Bill Gates, you know, which ties to the, you know, so you're just kind of like, whoa, it's nuts how it all interrelates. Now, Alexander the Great arrived in the city of Nyssa. Representative of the city met him. Oh, representatives of the city met him and told him not to capture the city and the land because the god Dionysus had founded the city, and he named it Nyssa after the nymph. And then they're saying here it all ties to Beit Shean in Israel, so which claimed Dionysus as the founder. So the town Beit Shean in Israel is really Dionysus's town. So it must, and I think that town is actually in biblical texts. So here's the town. Okay. They have changed names a few times. Yeah, they're saying here, in the biblical accounts, the battle of the Israelites against the Philistines at Mount Gilboa. The bodies of King Saul and 3 of his sons were hung on the walls of Beit Shean. Oh, wow, in Samuel 31:10. So, yeah, this is like a battle zone. You know, any biblical scholars would know about this. I'm not going to read all this, but it all ties into the pharaohs and Karnak, and you know, it's a huge historical site. So, you know, there's layers and layers and layers of battles and histories that have gone on in this place. But it even ties back to Ramses II. You know, and everything ties back to Ramses II. You know, something's going on. It's like when they, you know, they moved all those Egyptian gods on. I think was it March 22nd or something? They moved them all on the 322 day. Yeah, it's all symbolic. History repeating itself. So Elvis is born in a town that ties to Dionysus, and then he moves to the town of Memphis, which all ties into Egyptian mythology. Ptah is the creator god of Memphis, the city that served as the capital of ancient Egypt for most of its history, and which was known during that history as Hekaptat, House of Soul of Ptat. Now, he represents the scepter composed of symbols of life, ink, power, was, and stability, DJ'd. He also typically shown wearing a skull cap and standing on a plinth-shaped hieroglyph that is part of the name of Mayat, the goddess of fundamental truth. Okay, so he represents truth. Elvis is not evil, or he just represents truth. He's showing you the symbolism so you find your truth and find your freedom. So Memphis represents the House of Soul, and on August 16th, the same as Babe Ruth and the same as Elvis Presley, Aretha Franklin leaves this realm, and she is known as the Queen of Soul. August 16th is when the sun is right next to Regulus, the crown. It's known as the crown in alchemy. King and queen both died on the same day. The triad of Memphis. So we got back to the number 3, which is what Babe Ruth was his number, right? At the reduction of influence of the gods of Heliopolis, about the 5th and 6th dynasty, the gods of Memphis started to take a new character. As first principle creator, father of gods, and head of the triad. And since Horus was an ingredient of the god Ptah, and later was made the supreme god. So I'm showing you how Ptah ends up turning into Osiris, okay, because Horus is the son of Osiris. It's really representing the tree, right? Because Odin is the tree, Osiris is the tree. It's all the same, you know, mythology, but just expressed in different ways throughout history. In this video, it looks like, you know, Elvis is associated with the number 3, and his army battalion. I guess, I don't know if that is a triad at the bottom, but anyhow, number 3 is associated with him with his army service. First metal tank battalion, 32nd, which is his gematria, with his name, armored regiment, and 3rd armored division. And of course, Trump is pulled into the Memphis of Egypt as well because of Apis was the holy bull of the bull god of Memphis. And Trump was born between the horns of the silver gate of Taurus. So he is the bull, but he's also born on the crab nebula that is in between the silver gate. So he's also the moon. Cancer the crab, the only constellation ruled by the moon, where the beehive cluster is on its back, and that represents the manger of Jesus, or the gate of man. Okay, so Jesus is the moon, but he's also the sun, right? So he's both, because you have to get in between the sun and the moon, between Leo and Cancer, between the two pillars of Freemasonry to the middle path. The Promised Land, at the Keynes review, Elvis Presley meets Donald Trump. So there's this movie called The Promised Land, and of course they have to reference it to Donald Trump. So the director of The King, or The King, aka The Promised Land, was Eugene Jarecki. Now, I listened to this interview with him, really fascinating. He's comparing Elvis to the United States itself, like the dream of Elvis, and how the United States is kind of like falling apart now, and it didn't end up panning out to be what Elvis had promised, kind of the Elvis generation had promised everybody. So now he's also mentions this thing where how Ed Sullivan had I think it was the cast of Moby Dick on, and then Elvis Presley went on TV on another station, and everybody flocked to watch Elvis Presley instead of watching Ed Sullivan. And so I guess that's how he got onto the Ed Sullivan show afterwards. Now, he mentioned that, it was a competition between these Moby Dick characters, and I've mentioned Moby Dick before, is Situs, right? It's the sea monster. Now, this all ties into the Mobius strip and everything, but he said something really interesting. He said that Elvis was on stage with his microphone stand and ends up waving it like a spear and says Moby Dick. This is later on, like not when he was at the Ed Sullivan show, like probably more like later in the 60s. And I saw the video of it, and that's what he did. And so I was like, that is so cool, because Elvis is born on the spear. He's born, January 8th, where the sun is in Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter, which is God, right? So the sun is in God's house, in Jupiter's house, in Sagittarius. And this is amazing because it ties into fighting the dragon. Moby's Dick is the dragon that you have to spear, and you have to, control so that you can become free or become the king. But if you're new to my channel and you haven't watched my Mobius strip videos, I think there's 4 of them. I was having trouble uploading them at the time. This book, the Moby Dick, with this cover I can't even find anymore. I just wanted to go get the screenshot of it. It's just like I couldn't find it. So it was just weird. So I went back to my video and got it for you guys. Now, this reminded me of Trump and the Eye of the Storm and half the body ascending, and they've got the spear, which is all to do with Sagittarius. He has the spear, right, shooting into the Golden Gate. So this is an ascension story. It's like a man defeating the whale. This is what Mobius strip is really about. You're ascending from this realm and defeating this realm. So I wanted to leave you guys that, so you can go back and watch that if you haven't already. If you Google non-oriental wormholes, it'll bring you to a quantum physics theory of the Alice universe. and how there's a mirrored universe and that we're really trapped here. And I guess what's happening with the Mobius strip is that you have to go through the veil of this strip. And, you could say, oh, well, that's all, hogwash, they're all just making this all up. But the fact that there's a mosaic that shows the zodiac on a Mobius strip with the god Aeon, and I did another video where this is actually ends up being Uranus, right? So the planet Uranus, there's different gods. They put different names to this god in this ancient mosaic. So the Mobius strip ties to the stars in the heavens, right? Just from this ancient mosaic. So it's really important. And I think the whole story of Moby Dick is really about fighting the sea monster, Sittis, or having the hand of God getting you through to the other side of this realm that we're in. So the link between Elvis, August 16th, and this whole story ties to October 28th. This is when this lunar eclipse is going to happen in 2023. And this man, who is a mathematician and a cryptographic who introduced the infinity symbol, died on October 28th. That's not a coincidence. So this infinity symbol is the Mobius strip, right? It's the two realms. So the O2, who is a network for AI, like network for internet, they have lots of, they had the Blackwater Rabbit video, and they have lots of videos, but they're trying to get you to be endearing to this little AI robot, right? That the AI is the good path, this is how they use the symbolism. But they came out with this video yesterday with the duality of the Mobius strip. So it's being presented to us all the time, but in this little video that they did, they're going, you're going to float, but you're not coming back down. And I'm like, but anyhow, you can interpret that however you want. But all I know is the floating up path is not the path to freedom. It is certainly not. Back to the Promised Land of the United States being the Promised Land movie. This is kind of ironic. The funk band Was. Remember I just said Memphis, the Patat god, he was represented by Was? I haven't seen the movie, but basically what he does, he's saying, I'm steering my precious cargo through the belly of the beast. He's driving around in one of Elvis's Rolls Royce all across the United States, and he brings Alex Baldwin, Ashton Kutcher, James Carville, and a bunch of musicians, and they all go in the car and they play and they have, talk about Elvis and their experience. So, the fact that Alec Baldwin is there, we're thinking Alec Baldwin is some bad guy on Saturday Night Live making fun of Trump and he's so terrible. But it's almost like they all know the story and they want to still reference that Elvis is king and what Elvis represents. And anyhow, so I started looking into all these different musicians, and the little girl, Emmy Sunshine, she gets mooned and plays Blue Moon, Kentucky, which is an Elvis song, in one of her very first YouTube performances, I guess. Yeah, it's funny. They're going to perform on stage, and then somebody comes up to the window and moons them. So then they decide to play Elvis's Blue Moon of Kentucky. Now she ends up being an American Idol winner, so no doubt it's all pre-planned. That's a reference to the moon. And then one of the other musicians, he has a song referencing to the light of the burning sun. Now the reason this is important is that because Elvis's first, recording was "It's All Right." It's All Right, and it was from Sun Records, and he had Blue Moon, Kentucky on the back of it as the B-side. So he had the sun and the moon on his first recorded record. And then George Forgery, he has a song called Weeping in the Promised Land. So again, it's all about the Promised Land, right? And this is interesting because it ties in, this video ties into COVID and saying silence is violence, okay, that you're not saying anything. about it. So that's interesting that it's tying to COVID and our timeline right now. This is a famous photograph. It's a Pulitzer Prize photograph of Babe Ruth leaning on his bat with his number 3 jersey. Now this got retired obviously, but the 3 ties into the Trinity, right? And this is we're going to talk about what happened to him with his cancer and his chemotherapy treatment. Cancer and chemotherapy is a big part of this because it ties back to the moon again, right? Because cancer is ruled by the moon. But I'm going to stop this video here. I have another whole part, second part of this video, which is just as long as this first part. So I'm going to stop it and do a part 2 for this rest of this information. But please watch it all because I really think it helps us understand the whole story, and it just totally gets you out of the fear mode. You just start to go, wow, this is so huge and so big, so much more than politics. This is amazing. And then you just can kind of relax into the story as it starts to unfold in our timeline the next couple of years.